Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.
We're learning more about how President Trump's mega bill will impact San Diegans. Thanks for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Sanchez, in for Maya Trabolsi. According to state estimates, the newly signed federal budget package is expected to cut billions of dollars in funding for Medi-Cal and Cal Fresh each year. More than 1 million San Diegans rely on these programs for health care and food assistance. KPBS health reporter Heidi DeMarco spoke to a local pediatrician who warns the cuts will hit children the hardest.
The bill includes more frequent eligibility checks and work requirements for Medicaid recipients that could push 3.4 million Californians off health coverage, according to state estimates.
I'm very worried about the effects of this bill on child health. Like, we know Medicaid cuts are going to be huge.
And that, she says, is going to have lasting effects on a child's ability to access health care.
We know children are going to have a harder time getting into clinic to be seen for medical care, for urgent care, emergency care, dental care.
The bill also threatens food programs. More than 128,000 children in San Diego rely on Cal Fresh. That's California's version of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also called SNAP. The bill cuts the program by an estimated 30% and requires the state to share costs or reduce benefits. Spitzer says hunger can have long-term effects beyond nutrition, especially for children.
It's the most obvious. They may not grow as well. They may be shorter. They may be malnourished. They may get sick more often. But I think one of the things we don't think about, too, is what that does to their emotional, developmental, and mental health.
Spitzer warns reduced access to vaccines may also lead to a setback in disease prevention.
And I'm afraid that we're going to go back to a time where we do have to think more about measles, diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough. Hopefully not anything like polio.
The Board of Supervisors has ordered a rapid impact assessment due July 22nd and a full strategy to protect key services by the end of September. Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer says the bill would blow a hole in the county's budget.
We're going to have to take some pretty aggressive measures to protect San Diegans from the cuts that are coming.
Spitzer says part of her job now is helping families understand what these changes mean.
If they unfortunately lose Medicaid, the pediatricians are still going to see them.
She says they won't turn families away. Heidi DeMarco, KPBS News.
President Trump's campaign promise to end tax on tips was part of the big, beautiful bill. However, here's the fine print. It won't eliminate taxes on tips entirely, and it's only temporary. The first $25,000 in tips will be free from income taxes, and if a worker makes more than $150,000 a year, their tipped income will start to be taxed. Our media partner KGTV spoke to a bartender in Hillcrest about the potential benefits.
Things are still relatively, again, with cost of living, relatively tight. They're not necessarily something where I'm able to kind of flex as much. If anything, it'll be something I'll put more money aside for retirement, put more money aside for my future, and hopefully be able to use that cushion for something productive later on.
If not extended by Congress, the no tips on tax provision will phase out at the end of 2028.
Tonight, more of the same coming at us as we fall back into the mid-60s around the area. Keep in mind, though, the temperatures are working their way on up as we go into the middle of the week. So we'll be talking about some of those numbers getting higher in most spots, plus a little less of a marine layer in some of the week to come. I'll have that full forecast coming up.
Well, more than 100 people are dead following devastating floods through central Texas, and dozens of people are still unaccounted for. This as a flood watch covering nearly 5 million people remains in effect. Maribel Gonzalez has more on the search for victims.
Waterways in some of the most devastated parts of central Texas rising again Monday as more rain falls in the area. The elements hampering ongoing search and rescue efforts.
They're running into a lot of technical challenges with terrain, with water.
The Kerr County Sheriff's Office says over 400 local, state, and national first responders and more than a dozen canine units are helping in the search and rescue efforts. Here, the dramatic rescue after 2 people clung to a tree to save their lives. Others in the state, including children, were forced to swim to safety.
The flood started getting bigger, and it was going up to, we have bunk beds in our cabins, and it was going up to the top bunk, and we had one choice, and we had to swim out of our cabins.
I said a prayer when I was standing on my porch. Both my parents are deceased, and I said, Mom, Dad, God, help.
The death toll continues to rise, including 27 campers and counselors from Camp Mystic along the Guadalupe River.
I've lost near friends, best friends, my boss, my godchildren.
The Hill Country community now questioning if anything could have been done to prevent this tragedy.
Everyone here, if we could have warned them, we would have done so. And we didn't even have a warning.
While survivors come together in their grief.
The outpour of people near, far, it's been incredible.
In Kerrville, Texas, I'm Maribel Gonzalez reporting.
Today marks 6 months since the deadly and destructive Eaton and Palisades wildfires in Los Angeles County. The fire scorched tens of thousands of acres and destroyed thousands of structures. 30 people were killed, and just last month, fire officials lifted final evacuation orders. Debris has been fully cleared from nearly 80% of all residential properties that were destroyed. Almost a third of rebuild requests have been approved, and as LA enters its restoration phase, Gavin Newsom outlined plans.
We need to do more, and we need to be better in terms of accelerating these efforts. And so today I'll be signing another executive order addressing some of the issues that the city and county have requested of me.
That executive order includes plans to lower construction costs, reduce property taxes, and expedite rebuilding of homes and schools. San Diego County is in a crippling housing shortage. The supply of homes does not meet the heavy demand, driving costs far outside many people's budgets. As part of our Public Matters collaboration, Voice of San Diego, reporter Will Huntsberry brings us this story about one local city.
El Cajon is one of the most racially and economically diverse cities in San Diego, but it lags far behind the rest of the county in home building. In the last few years, El Cajon permitted less than 10 new homes per 1,000 residents. No other city had numbers that low. Chula Vista actually built the most new homes, nearly 4 times as many as El Cajon. That's all according to state data analyzed by Voice of San Diego and KPBS. The causes behind El Cajon's housing drought are complicated. The city has very little vacant land, and it's already the second most densely populated countywide. But there are a lot of shopping malls that would make for great building opportunities. So far, though, owners have been holding on to those properties.
It's just a matter of space. We're like Tokyo. There's no space left. There's no place to build.
The city's mayor, Bill Wells, says he is pro-development, but he also isn't really interested in changing the city's character or seriously increasing density.
Tall buildings bring in their own problems. I think 3 stories is about as much as this community can tolerate, because this community feels like, and I think they see themselves as being kind of a small rural community.
Wells says he doesn't currently have plans to change El Cajon's zoning laws. If anything, he says state laws already allow too much building. Take, for example, state laws that allow builders to bypass parking space requirements.
It's a fantasy to think that you're going to buy a condo and not have a car, and your roommate's not going to have a car, and you don't need any parking spaces because you've got a trolley that you could. 3% of the entire population of San Diego has ever ridden the trolley. People drive cars. But we live in this fantasy that we don't need cars.
Still, Wells says he isn't hostile to development and that he sees it as a way to reinvigorate blighted parts of the city.
You bring me somebody who wants to tear down an old strip mall and build a nice condo project, and we'll treat them really well.
Wells says if county officials are really serious about getting out of the housing crisis, they should open up the county's rural land for development. A lot of it is prone to fire, and Democrats, who now control the county again, have not wanted to build it out. In El Cajon, I'm Will Huntsberry with Voice of San Diego.
Stay tuned for more stories about housing locally from our Public Matters team. They will launch a series of housing at the end of the month. Federal immigration enforcement agents swept through a park in Los Angeles today. This is aerial footage of MacArthur Park showing military vehicles lining the street. It prompted a visit from LA Mayor Karen Bass, who later posted to social media saying once she heard about the operation, she went to shut it down. It's unclear if anyone was taken into custody. Did you know that ICE publishes a public spreadsheet showing exactly who is being held in immigration detention? It gives you an up-to-date picture of what is going on around the country and is available for anyone to look up at any time. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis shows us how to access it.
What if I told you that the federal government has a database and it shows you exactly who is being held in immigration detention, and you can look it up? My name is Gustavo Solis, and today we're giving you a special version of the Border Brief. I'm going to show you how to look into this data, which comes directly from Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It's published every 2 weeks, so it gives us an up-to-date look into who is being detained and where. The first thing you're going to do is go to this website, scroll all the way to the bottom, and download this data set. That will take you to this spreadsheet, which looks a bit overwhelming, but don't worry, I'm here to walk you through it. The first place you want to start is this Detention FY25 tab. It shows you exactly how many people are being detained and by which government agency they were arrested, either Customs and Border Protection or Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This table helps us get beyond the rhetoric and take a look at a historic transition in immigration enforcement under the Trump administration. It shows a massive shift from people being arrested along the border by Customs and Border Protection to people being arrested in the interior of the country by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Compare the last few months of the Biden presidency to the first few months of the Trump administration. You'll notice that under Biden, most of the arrests came from CBP, almost twice as many as ICE. But it's the exact opposite under Trump. You can see that starting in January, ICE began arresting more people than CBP. And that trend has grown each month since then. This data shows us the trend of less people at the border and a lot more enforcement inside the U.S. Now, we know ICE is arresting a lot more people, but who are they? To find that out, we can look at this table here. This table from January shows 62% of people arrested by ICE were convicted criminals. Just 6%, or less than 1,000 people, had no criminal record. Compare that to the latest table from June. Now, just 36% were convicted criminals, and ICE is arresting more than 11,000 people with no criminal records. That's almost 1/3 of all ICE arrests. Now, we're seeing a sharp decline in the number of convicted criminals and a massive increase in the number of people without criminal records. This shows us what happens when the Trump administration puts a lot more pressure on ICE to increase the number of arrests. There are only so many murderers and rapists out there, which is why ICE has gone from arresting less than 1,000 people without criminal records to more than 11,000 in a short amount of time. Let's dig a little deeper. Convicted criminal can mean a lot of things: petty theft, drug possession, assault, murder, driving without a license. Fortunately, the data gives us a breakdown by what they call ICE threat level. You can find it down here on the Facilities tab. This shows us the population breakdown of every immigration detention center in the country. According to their footnotes, ICE threat level is graded on a scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being the most severe. People without criminal records are simply classified as no ICE threat level. If you add up all the numbers of detainees classified as ICE threat level 1, you will see they total 3,207. In other words, just 7% of everyone detained by ICE is considered the worst of the worst. On the other hand, 83% of people detained by ICE are classified as no ICE threat level. These numbers, which come directly from ICE, tell us a very different story than what Trump administration officials tell us on national TV.
We've been doing this correctly. We've been building cases. We've been going after the worst of the worst and doing it the right way.
That's why President Trump from day one said, we're going to concentrate on national security threats and public safety threats, and that's what we're doing.
And we can't take the risk of letting these Biden illegals roam around freely so that the next American daughter can get raped, the next American kid can get murdered, the next American family can get splintered and torn apart.
I want to leave you with a little homework assignment. Find out what is going on in your community. For example, here's data from the Otay Mesa Detention Center right here in San Diego. I can see exactly how many men and women classified as criminal and non-criminal are being detained here. As you can see, it's people who are classified as non-criminals. You can use this data to find out what's going on in your community. Thanks for watching. I'm Gustavo Solis, and this is the Border Brief.
And you can download the ICE data at the website on your screen, ice.gov/detain/detention-management. From national and global headlines to events in your day-to-day life, the world can appear filled with chaos, which can make financial planning incredibly difficult. Michael Yoshida has more on ways to manage your feelings when managing your finances.
From conflicts to economic uncertainty and more, it can seem like the world is piling on top of our own concerns and considerations we face when making big financial decisions.
Money is something that we deal with 24/7.
Financial planner and financial therapist Rick Kaler says it's important to remember you can't control what's happening in the outside world, only your response to it.
90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally.
And when your anxiety seems to be in overdrive, consider how that may consciously and subconsciously influence your decisions. Kaler suggests trying to understand the stories, experiences, and traumas of your life, even if they have nothing to do with money.
All of this comes into play with every financial decision that we make. And the more stressed we are, the more triggered we are, the higher the chance of a poor financial decision playing out.
So whether it's a house, career change, growing your family, or something else, Kaler says be clear on what emotions may be at play.
When I can recognize, wow, I feel a lot of fear right now, maybe it's fear about what's going on in the world, that's a good time to take a pause if I'm looking at making a financial decision, even as small as buying the latte, and assess what is really going on.
In Washington, Michael Yoshida reporting.
Air pollution is a prime suspect as a cause of lung cancer in people who have never smoked. But secondhand smoke is not. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge has more on new research out of UC San Diego.
Reductions in tobacco smoking have led to lower rates of lung cancer in many places, but people who have never smoked still get lung cancer. In fact, globally, their numbers are proportionally on the rise. Scientists at UCSD wanted to learn why. So they studied gene mutations that act as signatures to indicate the cause of cancers. One cancer risk they examined was in people living in cities with strong particulate air pollution. Professor Ludmil Alexandrov was co-author of the study.
The results for air pollution that we got was, well, actually, in highly polluted places, we're getting many more mutations in people, and we're seeing very strong association with the pollution likely causing the mutations needed for people to develop cancer.
They also studied patients who were exposed to lots of secondhand smoke. Alexandrov said they expected to see strong evidence that passive smoking caused lung cancers.
There's more mutations, a bit more mutations in the cancers of passive smokers, but it's a very small elevation. And the things that we thought that we'll see, specific genes being more frequently mutated, or specific pathways, we really didn't see.
He says lung cancer among the 871 never smokers they surveyed around the world is higher among women, especially those of Asian descent. Alexandrov said they want to do further studies to learn what may be the risk of lung cancer that comes from smoking other things.
Because we're seeing the population changing their behavior from smoking tobacco cigarettes to actually vaping electronic cigarettes or to smoking marijuana. And we want to understand the risk.
Alexandrov was co-senior author of the research paper published in the latest edition of the journal Nature. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
From lung cancer to cardiovascular disease, it's the leading cause of death in the U.S. According to the CDC, one person dies of cardiovascular disease every 33 seconds. But a new study suggests many who are eligible for medication to lower cholesterol aren't actually taking it. Mandy Gaither talks to the lead author about the reasons why.
Every year in the U.S., about 805,000 people have a heart attack, and more than 795,000 men and women have a stroke. But there are medications to reduce the risk of both.
Despite the benefits of these treatments for high cholesterol, they're underutilized.
Dr. Caleb Alexander with Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is lead author of a study that analyzed 5,000 U.S. adults. About half of those studied were eligible to take medication to lower cholesterol, but only about 23% of the patients who had never had a major cardiovascular event were taking the medicine to reduce risk of one. And of those who have had a major event, only about 68% were taking the medication.
These treatments include statins, which many people may be familiar with. These drugs are safe and effective and have been on the market for many, many years, but they're also newer treatments.
Alexander says there are many reasons people aren't taking cholesterol-lowering medication. Many are undiagnosed and skip yearly checkups so they don't know they have high cholesterol. Others may not feel they need treatment or are unable to afford it, and others don't remember to take the medicine consistently.
Tens of thousands of heart attacks and tens of thousands of strokes could be prevented each year if people were receiving treatment for high cholesterol that's in accordance with the best expert guidelines.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
An iconic landmark on San Diego's coastline is back open to the public today. The nearly 100-year-old Crystal Pier in Pacific Beach had been closed since December 2023 because of storm damage. Dozens of people were out enjoying the pier on its first day of reopening. Susan Layton and her out-of-town visitor wandered onto the pier while sightseeing.
We actually didn't even realize that it was open today and just happened upon it, and we're so excited because it really just is a whole different view being able to be out here.
Pier repairs cost the city of San Diego more than $2 million. No additional construction is currently planned, but the city says they will continue to monitor the pier for any future damage.
Thankfully, our weather has been quite quiet across the area. As we continue to go through this week, we are hedging the numbers up in many locations. So we've got a warmer trend here coming in for the next couple of days. So we'll be dealing with that. On top of things, we'll be talking about that shallower marine layer fully in place. And as we work our way into the weekend, there is a cooler week ahead for us. We'll see some of those changes ongoing. Right now across the region, you can tell some of the numbers here holding on into the 60s. For lows, 65 for the city overnight, 61 in Oceanside, back into the mid-50s for Ramona, and 76 in Borrego Springs. Tuesday, across the Southwest, nothing really changes. In fact, we're building the heat, including in through our desert locations and beyond. So the numbers are continuing to try to work their way to higher temperatures as we go into Wednesday. And so for tomorrow, we find Borrego Springs back to 113. Well, the city itself in the mid-70s there with 77. Chula Vista 78 for your high. Oceanside, same thing as Escondido hits 88 for the afternoon. Here's a look at your forecast. The next couple of days, really not too much changing here along the coast. You can tell it does get a little bit warmer as we work our way into Wednesday with temperatures near 80 degrees. That's going to be a similar trend for most spots here, including our inland communities, as we hold on to 90 and 93 for the afternoons here Wednesday and Thursday. That's going to be the height of the warmth. We'll start to ease off of things Friday into Saturday. It does look like a cooler weekend for us. Notice the mountains trying to hold on to the mid-70s here for Friday and Saturday. We still, though, will be on the slightly higher side as we go through tomorrow and Wednesday. And for our desert communities, the 110-plus range continues here Tuesday into Wednesday as well as Thursday, where we deal with those numbers well above 110 before easing off heading into the upcoming weekend. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constancer.
Looks good. San Diego Pride is grappling with several corporate sponsors pulling their support. But KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says early ticket sales for the Pride Festival, they have never been higher.
A pride controversy erupted last month when a coalition of Jewish organizations pulled out of the festival over one of its headliners, Grammy-nominated R&B singer Kehlani. The artist has spoken out in support of Palestinian sovereignty and against Israel's war in Gaza. A handful of corporate sponsors also pulled their support. Mayor Todd Gloria says he will not attend the festival but will still march in the parade. Kristen Flickinger, interim executive director of San Diego Pride, says the controversy has not hurt ticket sales, which are roughly double where they were at this point last year and in 2019, pre-COVID.
People reach out to us daily telling us how excited they are for Kehlani, for Kim Petras. And we also have folks reaching out regularly saying that they're really grateful that Kehlani remains as the headliner and how much that means to them.
San Diego Pride has updated its safety measures, its entry policy, and its code of conduct, Flickinger says. Only clear plastic bags will be allowed inside, and banners, flags, and signs cannot be placed in the direct sightline of performers.
What we remain committed to is ensuring that there's a space for dissenting voices. Again, not hate speech, but dissenting voices, especially at a moment when our federal government is trying to silence specific voices, particularly queer voices of color.
The Pride Parade kicks off at 10 a.m. on July 19th. The festival takes place in Balboa Park on the 19th and 20th. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
And thank you for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Sanchez. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.